And so unfortunately, Walter Haveras is not going to take part today because he's ill. So we will now be listening to Kaarel Veskis, who is online from Tartu.
Well, hello. Here is the topic of my presentation. I am a first-year doctoral student, and I thought I maybe should say that I am not a linguist, and my university background is actually literature studies and also computer linguistics, but not this kind of computer linguistics that I have used in the analysis that I will talk about in the presentation. And I think this is my first individual conference presentation, so please don't be too harsh about any possible mistakes or blunders. So the main topic of my PhD studies is actually the poetic synonyms of the Estonian runosongs, but at the moment I'm trying to concentrate on some of the diminutive forms in the runosongs because diminutives are common to these poetic synonyms, and I think I can approach the subject of poetic synonyms by analyzing these diminutive forms. So at first, I am trying to find out some general tendencies by looking at how the most frequent diminutive suffix kene is distributed in the Estonian runosongs. Here is the structure of the presentation that I will try to follow. At first, some general information about diminutives that you probably already know, but maybe not all people listening. And then I will talk about my own analysis of the diminutives suffixes of the runosongs. So what is a diminutive? Well, it's a root word that has been modified to convey a slighter degree of the root meaning, to convey the smallness of the object or quality, or to convey a sense of intimacy or endearment. Also, it can convey other senses. Here's an Italian example, but this would be possible in Estonian too. And the diminutive form is specifically the word formation device that is used to express diminutive meanings. And diminutives are most commonly formed by adding suffixes to nouns or adjectives. This is the case also of Estonian, but not in English, where you see a different kind of forming of diminutives. So these are the, I think, most common academic frameworks or disciplines in which diminutives have been studied. Of course, there are more studies about diminutives in languages where diminutives are being used more, and that also have many speakers, such as Spanish, Italian, and Russian. As for the studies about literature, they are a good parallel for understanding diminutives in folklore texts, such as the runosongs that I will talk about here. And as for the diminutives in Estonian, one thing that makes diminutives interesting is that as a linguistic feature, they are clearly more common to the poetic language of the Estonian runosong compared to contemporary Estonian. Contemporary Estonian has much less diminutive use compared also to many other languages. And we see high amounts of diminutives in the Estonian runosongs, but we cannot draw conclusions from there about the diminutive use in old archaic Estonian language in general, because the runosong format is a distinct poetic register that has its own intrinsic rules governing the use of diminutives and also many other linguistic features. So here are a couple of slides that I will skip fast because I think you already heard the introduction to runosongs in general and also the overview of runosongs databases. So you probably know all this. So I will only say that the filter database is the place that I got my datasets from, and I will describe the datasets here in the presentation a little later. So one problem with analyzing diminutive forms as part of the morphology system is that the diminutive suffixes often do not modify the meaning of the root word in a way that is equivalent to other suffixes, and the exact meaning of the word modified by the diminutive affix or suffix may be totally dependent on context or other factors relevant to the situation or the speech act where it is used. And in case of archaic texts such as the Estonian runosongs, there is not much information about the context, so the functions of diminutives can remain somewhat enigmatic for many of the cases. And to try to understand diminutive use in runosongs is it's interesting, but it is hard to analyze. So here is an example of a diminutive poetic synonym used in a runosong translated to English. And this is the direct speech part of a mother in the song addressing her daughter and calling her a little bird. And the translator has interpreted the meaning of this particular case of diminutive use as endearment, which may be right, although there is no equivalent to the word darling in the original Estonian case. And here is a short overview of my goals of analyzing the use of the most frequent diminutive suffix kene in runosongs. There is a lot of variation of this particular suffix in runosongs because the runosongs language is composed of many different dialects and historical layers, and therefore also many different forms of words and suffixes. And even in the same dialect, there can be many different forms. So my goal was to get an overview of some of the trends of this variation with my quantitative analysis. So all the data sets that I describe here have been extracted from the filtered database, the part of the Estonian runosongs, with the help of our Estonian Folklore Archives runosongs hackathon work group that is led by Maris Sarv. And this is a fragment of this is the structure of one of my 3 datasets about this diminutive distribution. Here, the main variable that I am studying is occurrences or tokens of a word form with the diminutive suffix in the corresponding morphological form, that is including all dialectal forms that I could detect with my regular expression. And other fields or variables are supposed to add information about the unique occurrences of the word forms. So you have to keep in mind that the base words are actually not real lemmas because the corpus has not been lemmatized. They are just a word form without the suffix. Although the dataset also has the list of suffixes used. So to put together this dataset, I designed a regular expression to find all possible forms of the suffix, and I described the planned format of the datasets to some of the members of the work group, and they helped me to put together this dataset. This is the simple regular expression that I used to find all possible dialectal forms of this suffix in nominative form. I manually checked with the corpus, and this should find most of these forms. So if you know regular expressions, then you probably understand how it works. In brackets, there are the list of vowels that can or cannot be in this position to find the correct suffix forms. And here is a fragment of the original dataset with in the first column the frequencies of the word form cases, and the next the verse lines and the parishes, and the word forms divided then into base form and diminutive suffixes. These are the overall most frequent nominative singular forms of this diminutive suffix according to my results. You can see here that the today's written language form of the suffix is by far most prevalent, and this form is followed by some of the southern Estonian dialect variants like kene and etc. So here you can see the main reference or the persons that are talked about in the runosongs in the diminutive format. This may give you some idea about who were the persons or family members that were sung about or addressed most often in the special and longer format of diminutive words in the runosongs. Here you can see preliminary results of one of my experiments. I made a frequency list of other forms of the kene suffix that have been added in the corpus to the most popular diminutive root word neitsi, and it seems that there are somewhat different semantic groups of the diminutives based on the inflectional case that the suffix has been used in the song. I have not yet outlined these groups, but this could be interesting to try to do that in the future. So this is one possible practical output of the idea that was on the last slide. So using the list of these diminutive lemmas that were presented, most of the diminutives in different grammatical and dialectal forms in runosong text should be possible to detect and have automatically annotated with the semantically equivalent nominative word of today's written language, like here on this example. And then they should it should be possible to extract those forms from the corpus to form a complete dataset of kene diminutives of Estonian runosongs. So if it would be possible, then the results could enable more thorough corpus analysis of diminutives of Estonian runosongs, and maybe a reasonable next step might be to try to detect multi-word runosong specific diminutive idioms and also the diminutive poetic synonyms with the help of the context analysis of this automatically derived diminutive forms lists. And here is a frequency list of most frequent verse lines containing the kene diminutive in nominative form. Here we can see that these verse lines mostly are fixed word combinations of two words, both of them in diminutive format, and the adjectives added to the nominative words mostly convey meanings that are related to some kind of endearment. So this is the structure of the second data set that I actually started with. The data set has the relative frequencies in regions of Estonia of all verse lines that contain the diminutive suffix kene in nominative form, complemented with the geographical coordinates associated with the regions. So the filter database does not contain the geographical coordinates so far as I know, but so I got the coordinates from Mari Sarv. I don't know, maybe the coordinates of parishes could be then added to the filter database. Just a thought that I had now, but although filter already has the map application, so adding coordinates may not be necessary. These are the starting hypothesis of the study that was related to the second data set. So in short, I try to clarify how much the use of the nominative form of this suffix varies geographically in Estonia with the help of the coordinates information. So here are the results on the map, and we can already see that there seems to be more of this kind of diminutive verse lines in the east or south, but I also used other tests and visualizations to even further clarify this correlation, and this I will show you in the next slides. So here are the relative frequencies of the diminutive use grouped by counties. Well, you can see for some reason there is a lot of dispersion in some counties, but the general tendency is more diminutive in the east. So here's the same thing that was on the last slide without the text labels here, and the counties are sorted here somewhat differently, but still this is the same thing. And these are the counties sorted by average frequencies of these diminutive suffixes, and we can see here more clearly the same trend of in the eastern counties, there being more of this diminutive suffix. And here is one thing that I then did to compare the western and eastern regions in terms of the relative diminutive use, I grouped the longitudes coordinates data into two groups, dividing the longitudinal data in the median point of the longitudes. So on the next slide, in the western block, you can see the diminutive frequency distribution of the parishes with the longitudes less than the median, and the eastern block, the parishes that are bigger than the median of longitudes. And here we can see in the comparison of the quartiles of the two groups that the relative frequency of kene suffix in runosong text is indeed larger in the east. I also compared the north and south groups with this method, but the difference doesn't seem to be significant here in terms of the relative frequencies. So if we want to interpret the results of the two groups comparison, we need to know a couple of things about the standard meter of the runosong words. For example, that the grammatical features and the choice of words in consecutive verses of a group of parallel verses reflect and are chosen generally as similar to the main verse in the frames of the verse meter. And here is an example of this. The only reason adjectives here are with the diminutives may be that the meter requires a longer version of the root word in this position. Also, we need to know that the meter of the runa words has shortened. We know that it has shortened in the western regions compared to east, and therefore we may see more of the shorter version of the kene diminutive that would be k in west, but the exact frequency of the shorter suffix form is hard to determine because of the overlappings of the shorter ending with other inflectional and conjugation forms. Prevalence of kene in east can be due to differences in meter, but all this still needs clarifying. So I will conclude here. Here are some references. And some more references here. And I thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Kaarel. That was a very good presentation. I think everybody enjoyed it very much. Who wants to ask the first question? Yes?
Thank you very much. Great presentation. I was wondering, so you link in the end the difference in the east and the west to the difference in meter, but could be also explained partly, at least, to the Slavic influence, right? Because the diminutives in Slavic folk songs, in Russian especially, because in Setma show it's quite long. It's like this is the bread and the butter of the folk songs, because you need like diminutive suffixes. They form like dactylic endings, and dactylic endings is kind of the default stuff. So do you think this could be also explained, or at least partly the mechanism of influence could be played there?
Sorry, I didn't understand the influence in east and west could be influenced by what? Do you mean what exactly?
The eastern prevalence for the diminutive suffixes would be explained by the Slavic context and Slavic influence.
Oh. So that the Slavic has the something similar to this longer format of diminutive, you think?
Yeah. They are usually forming, so the Russian diminutive suffixes, they're forming the dactylic ending, right? So they're long usually.
Yeah.
That might explain the difference. You mentioned the Belarusian, right? That the Belarusian songs are based on suffixes, and in Russian it happens pretty much similarly, yes.
Yeah, this is definitely very interesting because yeah, I have read some that there is one interesting comparison of Estonian and Russian diminutives in the literature, and indeed Russian has a lot more diminutives compared to Estonian. But I am not an expert on runosongs. I have not studied folkloristics, and I just started. I'm in many ways I am in a similar position to Maciej that talked earlier that he's just a computer scientist. I'm not a computer scientist either, so I'm not an expert on any of these fields. So maybe Mari or someone who knows the history of runosong could offer her thoughts about how about the Slavic influence.
Thank you. No, it's just that the proposal of a possible direction to explore later, but it's a great presentation. Thank you.
Yes, maybe we can keep the rest of that conversation with Mari later during the lunch break. I think there's a question online from Taipei.
Hello?
Hello?
Can you hear me? Yes, hello.
I can hear you.
I am here in my country house. Sorry for the background. Thank you very much for the fascinating presentation, Kaarel. And I wanted to add a little bit to the previous question. I thought that perhaps you could compare the use of diminutive in Eastern and Western dialects, because it seems me that in Eastern dialects, in everyday speech, diminutives are more used than in Western dialects. It, of course, can be the Slavic influence, but also might be not. And I think the Slavic influence is not on these runosongs, but perhaps it comes from the language, from Eastern dialects, and has come to the Eastern runosongs. Perhaps you can think about this connection. And also what I noticed that these verses of diminutives usually stand at the beginning of the structural parts of the runosong. Perhaps they can have a kind of communicative function in the runosongs. They somehow might indicate the beginnings in oral tradition. If you can only hear the text, perhaps it can be the idea what to think about. But basically, thank you very much.
Thank you. Nice to see you, Taiva. Regarding the last question, indeed, they seem to be more diminutives seem to be more common in the beginnings of poems, and they seem to indicate some kind of usually the person's some person is addressed, or they start to talk about or sing about some person in the start of the poem, and
then there are consecutive verses where this person is maybe also addressed with some poetic synonyms, or something like that. I haven't really looked in depth to the content or the plots that are there to look at all the functions or functions or the storylines that how the diminutive varies in there, but this would be definitely interesting. But regarding the first question that you had, I'm not exactly sure what you meant. The comparison between East and West. You think about the Slavic influence. You think that did you think that the Slavic influence is not the case, or it might be Slavic influence, or
I don't think so much about the Slavic influence, but I think that there might be the difference between Estonian Western and Eastern languages or dialects, and these differences have influenced the runosong tradition in Eastern and Western Estonia. So the bigger use of diminutives in Eastern runosongs come from the abundance of diminutives in Eastern dialects. And if it is caused from Slavic languages or not is not the main question at the moment.
Yeah, well, I think Mari would maybe argue that that also in West there could be as many diminutives as in East, because only that in West there are shorter versions. Because the meter has shortened in West, then also we have the shorter version of this diminutive. But this is something that I should have maybe already tried to do. I tried to also measure this shorter diminutives, but it is very hard to do because I mentioned also in the presentation there are many overlappings of the shorter diminutive with other forms like kaske, laske, tehke. You really it would be very hard to get a statistical overview of the shorter diminutive variation. So it's hard to compare.
Yes, thanks.
I think we can maybe move on to, there was before Mari's question online, I think there was a question that was prior in the room, or Peter, was it you who wanted to ask something? Or? Then we will ask Mari to go ahead with her question. Thank you.
I don't have a question, but I wanted to share, especially with Kaarel, my results of my last article. I looked at the euphemisms and dysphemisms which Estonians use to address to several birds and animals, starting from wolf and all kind of especially birds are of course interesting, but also insects and so on. It's very typical that also in the kind of, if you have a ritual plus a very, very short sentence or two sentences where people are using very kind polite versions. I cannot say that they are always euphemisms, but it's very obvious that they are ready to speak about awful animal as little, or like about the birds, little birdie. Although they actually are thinking about Raven, and how he will attack the cattle or small animals and so on. And there was also quite interesting the same picture as you got in runosongs. More diminutives in the northern area. We know that when you visit, for example, islands, and you are speaking with old people, it's quite typical that not in everyday speech they address to you like you are girl or small boy and so on. So I think it's a maybe wider problem, and as Taiva mentioned, maybe it is somehow connected with introductory addressing verses in runosongs, like also in rituals and in charms and in incantations. And basically I got the same picture that in some areas in northern Estonia, they are typically in everyday speech, not using very much diminutives, but in incantations they use them quite a lot. So maybe there are some kind of how to say, rules, norms of introductory parts and so on, which also have an influence to the poetic text, like everyday background, everyday behavior, everyday norms, and so on. It was my first what I thought about during your very interesting presentation. Thank you, Kaarel.
Thank you. Yes, the euphemisms are definitely very much related with diminutives, so that it might be partly synonym, like also hypochorism is another synonym for diminutives. But if I understood correctly, then you detected that in northern Estonia there are more euphemisms than in south. My results were that in south there are somewhat more diminutives compared to north, and especially there are more of the longer diminutives in east, but this is only about the longer version of the kene diminutive in nominative form, because I have not done the statistics on all forms, but the longer version you see more of it in the east. But it would be interesting to see what kind of euphemisms are then prevalent in the north. Could you maybe bring some examples of? Or I can look this up later.
We have I'm sorry because the time is starting to run a little bit. Those are really interesting discussions, but I think Kati also wanted to ask something. Go ahead.
Thank you so much, Kaarel. Actually, it's kind of confirmation I just checked. I think you have it right. I checked with Eideke, Poisikki, and Neijukke. I mean, one syllable shorter forms, and those are, the maps are exactly the opposite. So it's more common in the West. So that's really interesting what you are doing. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good. Well, thank you, and thank you very, very much, Kaarel, for your intervention.